everybody, we are the Northeast Stephen Sondheim Theatre and welcome to episode 1 of season 2 of A Little Night podcast. We had an absolute ball recording season 1 that we had to start recording season 2. This season is going to be bigger and better. I don't want to give anything away, but we've got some very exciting things planned. Anyway, on to this episode. My name is Adam Donaldson and I'm the NESST company manager and I'm going to be your host for tonight. Joining me, we have my right-hand man, the NESST assistant company manager, the sensational, award-winning best actor at the Sedgefield Drama Festival 2020, David Parker.
Hi.
We also have the hilarious and the new fundraising coordinator, Holly Parkinson.
Good evening.
And we also have Italia Conti's own. We also have Italia Conti's own and WWE superfan, the NESST publicity manager, Marya Smith.
That's right, that's me.
Well, now that you've met me guest, let's get on with this episode. Now, I've got a few new episodes planned for season 2, but we want to start off with something familiar for you all. You might have remembered that in season 1 we did an episode called Maniacal Mains, which was hosted by yours truly, and we want to make a sequel to it. Now, this episode entails me giving my guests 3 statements weighing up the positive and negatives to a Sondheim character, and at the end we need to come up with a verdict, whether they're good or evil. Obviously, I just want to give credit to Russell Cade's Evil Genius podcast series, because it is very much based on that. In season 1, we made our verdict on The Witch. Spoiler alert. The guest in that episode said that she was evil. So it's time to make another verdict on another character. Will we have 2 evil characters in a row? You'll just have to listen and find out. So, the character we're going to be talking about is the titular character in a show. He's handy with a paintbrush and he isn't a fan of stripes. Today, we're going to be having a look at Georges Seurat in Sunday in the Park with George. And it's somebody who I know very well, as 2 years ago I actually played the part. So I'm going to go say that he's evil from the outset, because have you seen that beard? It doesn't look like he's had a shower in quite a while. But anyway, let me tell you a bit about Georges Seurat. So the musical Sunday in the Park with George uses Georges Seurat's life as an inspiration. First act begins with a black canvas and ends with a remarkable recreation of the masterpiece. And it all goes through how Georges Seurat creates his paintings and shares his opinions of the people around him and tries to recreate their lives and the relationships they have with others. And at the end, we see the finished picture of Sunday afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte. So, why not? Let's get straight into it. So, to my guests, David Parker up first. What is your first opinion when you think of Georges Seurat?
Well, first opinion is that, I mean, it's pretty harsh to sort of contrast good and evil, but he's cantankerous, he's very grumpy, at the very least. But he's been made that way by the environment, by the arts landscape of the time. You know, he's rejected by pretty much everybody he comes across. All of his subjects, who he's making immortal through his paintings, are you know, don't like him, but he is very, very rude to them. But you know, it's a chicken and egg situation. Don't they like him because he's rude to them, or vice versa? Yeah. So the only opportunity in Sunday in the Park with George that we really get as an insight into his sort of emotional thinking really is finishing the hat, which is all about blame, you know, and that's a key insight. So, you know, he's very much blaming everybody around him that this is the way that he is, and all he's trying to do is create a masterpiece, and you know, he's trying to sort of create a legacy for himself. And yeah, so the greatest insight into his character is that he's blaming people, which obviously is not a good quality.
Yes.
So I'm leaning on the side of evil. I think evil's a bit harsh. I don't think he's evil. But I think we're definitely on that side of the spectrum rather than good.
Yes. Well, Marya Smith, what is your first opinion What do you think
Well,
of Georges Seurat?
I do love myself an emotionally unavailable man with a beard. And I feel like that sums up George in a nutshell. You want to like him so bad. And I think especially when someone's name is the title of the show, you want to root for that person. You want them to be the protagonist. But he's just so cold. Like it's very hard to relate to him, I think, for most people. And I think he's quite hard to read for the other characters in the show, which to me is kind of a big, I'm not going to say a turn off because that's not the right word at all. But you know what I mean? Like it's very hard to like someone who doesn't let you in. And I feel like we're not let into George's, wants, needs, hopes and dreams very easily. So again, like David, I don't think I could quite call him evil, but I wouldn't take him home to me mum. Let's put it that way.
Well, let's not say that he's maybe evil, but maybe good and nasty. Maybe he's not a nice person. Not fully evil though, like the witch. But Holly Parkinson, what is your opinion of
I kind
Georges
of
Seurat?
have like almost the opposite perception of Anna, in which obviously he's a title. I agree, he's a title character, so your automatic reaction is to root for him. But I think like the grumpiness and the coldness and like the almost mystery makes him like almost like, dare I say, endearing. Like you want to know more about him, like you want to know who he is, and I think the way he works is interesting. And like David was saying, like you're not quite sure whether he's the cause or the effect. You don't know whether or not he's been made that way or whether or not he's made other people that way. And I think watching him go through what he does and watching like just the arc of his story is kind of what draws you in. And it kind of, because I think he is, if you kind of lay him out like linear and be like, well, he does this and this and this, that must mean that he's not a very nice bloke. For me, it's not necessarily how I feel watching him. I kind of like, I root for him a little bit and I want him to get what he wants. And especially like, I think during finishing the hat, when you do get that insight, that tiny bit of insight you get, like, gives him like just enough humanity to the point where I'm like, actually, no, like he's a person and he struggles. And I think all the rejection that he feels, I think it depends person to person how you as a person deal with rejection. Because if you don't deal very well, you'll see yourself in him. But if you're someone who kind of tends to like barrel on through and roll with the punches, then you'll be like, well, I can't relate to that as a person. So I think he's good but troubled. I think a work in progress.
Well, maybe these statements could shift your ideas. So, without further ado, let's get on to the first statement. So, first statement I've got here is art over common decency. Georges Seurat is obviously a very talented artist and very dedicated to his work. But is that any excuse to treat Dot the way that he did? He's constantly pushing her aside, not giving her any attention, and constantly making her feel second best. Until the beautiful We Do Not Belong Together, which is actually one of my favourite songs in Sons of Fat George, where Dot is fully getting a point across that before she leaves George. Is it right? Should George have been like this to put his talent first? Because I would say, like, say if I'm like I'm doing really well at work or something, I'm not going to be nasty to to like all my colleagues just to get like do the work well, if that makes sense to me. But like, so I don't really see how he can be the way he is just because of his work. But what do you guys think? We'll go Anna first.
Oh, see, I think a lot of his kind of downfall comes from his perfectionism. However, I think personally, if he was a better person, so like if the song that Yvonne sings, "No Life," I think if he was a better person and took more from the people around him rather than just what he could see, I think that would translate into his work and everything would be a little bit better for him. I think by closing himself off the way he does, he limits himself, not just creatively, but emotionally, which is going to affect every aspect of his life. So, and especially the way he treats Dot, it drives me mad. I love Dot, but when you listen to her two kind of upbeat songs, Sunday in the Park with George and Everybody Loves Louie, they seem really happy and jolly and upbeat, but like they're heartbreaking when you pick them apart. Like, this is a woman who is just being completely cast aside no matter what she does. And it's not even as if he's like, go away, I don't want to see you again, because he keeps using her essentially with no intention to ever, actually take anything any further with her. And I just think he's so shut off that it's very limiting for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I remember when we were in rehearsals, and obviously with David directing, the way that David directed me was to be very emotionless towards Ellie Lakey. Shout out if you're listening, Ellie. She was Dot. And I remember after scenes, I would always be like, I'm really sorry that I've had to do that, because like she was given so much. Like, obviously is the character, and then I was just completely shutting it off. Like, no, like this is what George wants. This is what George needs. And I agree with you, and I feel really sorry for Dot. Like, I feel like what she has to go through and put up with. It's shocking, like, but but maybe that's because it's an evil person. But anyway, we won't diddle daddle on that. Holly, what do you think about that art over common decency little statement?
I agree with Anna to an extent. I think with people who you're quite distant from, or other people in the industry, I would understand him not being very nice to them, because I think, like, with when it's set and like the way people treat him, I understand him wanting, like, not being bothered about stepping on other people and like using other people to like get where he wants to go. But I think with Dot, I think he obviously, unless he doesn't, I'm not sure. I think he quite obviously sees how much she does on him, and I just don't think he's bothered. Which I'm like, Dot is also a grown woman, so Dot could just be like, you quite obviously don't care about me, so like I'm gonna go. But I think, like I said before, I think all of his like mystery and like, ooh, he's actually like not that nice, is like the fact that can be endearing, I think, is what keeps Dot like kind of like pandering to him. And so I think it is mainly his fault, but I think it's like a 95-5 split, where I do think if Dot like was maybe less tolerant of him, she should just walk off. But I know that it's a lot of the time not that easy. So I think I agree with Anna. I'd say I agree with Anna. I think he needs to chill being so mean to Dot.
David Parker?
Yeah. I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit, because I want to make things interesting. It is very much, in George's mind, the ends justify the means. He is cantankerous. He knows that he's onto something with this pointillism stuff. He knows it. He absolutely knows it. He's nothing will deter him from this. Nobody around him can see this. Literally nobody. This is represented by Jules. He comes around. He can't see the benefit of it, and he's not even willing to sort of give too much of a to look at the painting really closely. The most that Jules gives him is 2 minutes in that scene. It's insulting. And then we know that Georges Seurat, at various events, other painters had their paintings removed because they saw the fact that his painting being there as as an insult to the craft almost. So he's very much in this situation where nobody is giving him anything. But then as soon as he dies, he's infamous. Not infamous. He's famous. He everybody loves his stuff, and it's almost as if it takes. That to me implies that he was so cantankerous that everybody was just waiting for him to die, and that was what it took in order for people to sort of go, you know what, he was actually a really good painter. The fact that he was so, such a grumpy book, people just weren't willing to give him people weren't willing to give him an inch, and because of that, it's very much that question of chicken and egg, which one came first, and it's a tug of war between both, and let's just say that George, he won because he's now renowned. He's the only he's the only character in the first act whose name isn't made up.
Yes, very true. And I think when you look at Act 2, I think Georges Seurat is looked at very differently. Like to the grandson George in Act 2.
Absolutely.
Like he's looked as like you're not as good.
Yes. On that point, if I may, that's very much the dichotomy of the two acts. George in the second act spends far too much. The second act is pretty much putting it together.
Yeah.
We all remember that, and that is all about appeasing everybody and trying to convince people that your art is worth investing in. George in the first act did not do that enough. George in the second act did that too much.
Yeah. Now, they're three very, very good points. And I'm glad it's David that he played devil's advocate, because I was a bit nervous that it's an all agree.
I have one more thing. Can I add something?
That's good.
Can I add something?
Of course you can.
I just think, after thinking about it, I think I was a little bit... I do think that Dot, to a level, knows what she's getting into. And I think that sounds really, really mean, but I think if you're going to be with someone and, like, at first glance, they're, like, not really that bothered, then I think Veretta remains, she knows she's with an artist and someone that wants to succeed. And I think David's right in saying that to George, the end justifies the means, because I think, like, obviously what happens to George when he's alive is kind of not a lot of bearing on what happens after he dies. What happens after he dies is important, is, like the art. So, like, obviously George was a real person. Like, for example, like Van Gogh is very much like immortalized through his pain and all that stuff, and his paintings aren't what they are without all of his like heart behind it. And so I think with George, he wouldn't have got where he got if it wasn't for how harsh he was to Dot. And I think she kind of knows that. That's all.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go to statement 2. And this one, I would say is more of a personal one. I mean, you can disagree with there's only one, but this, obviously, by playing the part, this is what I kind of got from it. So, when I was exploring the part, I always seen George in Act 1 quite like an introvert. Like, whenever he got to like speak with another character, it was very to the point. I don't want to speak to you for too long. Then I'm back to me painting. Is that just the way he is? And can that not really be helped? Is that just Georges Seurat himself? Is he just an introvert? Is he maybe socially awkward? And then is art then his safe space that he just wants to get to? And are these conversations just like kind of like uncomfortable to him? That was just something that I thought when I was playing the part. Because if I was going to try and do a good thing, I didn't want it to just be obvious and being like, he's a really good painter, so he's a really good person. But I did find that he was quite introverted. He doesn't like them conversations. So can he really be made into a bad person if that's maybe the way that he is? If he just wants to get to that safe space, which is making the art. David Potter, do you want to go first this time?
Yeah. So for me, there's all kinds of indications that he's kind of on the high functioning autistic spectrum.
Yeah.
I always thought I sort of considered that as an angle. And yeah, like he is, he struggles with social interaction. He really does. He just wants to get on doing his own work. And really, in a, you know, when you are a painting, when you're a painter, you're a bit of a celebrity. And, you know, I mean, all that pestering and stuff, you know, when he's just trying to focus on his work, he's very focused on his work. That's his 100% his mantra. But his work involves other people, and he wants to keep them at a distance. You know, he wants to keep them on the other side of that window. So, yeah, like when they come over to him, as the Celestes do, and he's like, you know, I've already painted you ladies. He very much wants to keep them on the other side of that window. And that's, you know, to his credit, because people can be really annoying.
Yeah. I think he'd be perfect around now, you know, like with social distancing.
Yeah.
He'd be loving it.
Honestly,
yeah.
he's just like everyone else on the tube.
But like, no, excuse me, keep your 2 meters
It's like
and get
every
up
single
there.
Londoner.
But yeah, I think that is a really good point. Like, obviously, the work does include other people, but when it comes to actually chatting to them, which is quite interesting when the boatman recognizes that he's actually drawn him, because he does it quite secretly, doesn't he, George? Like, he's always like just looking at somebody until they notice him, and then they're like especially the boatman's like, "What you doing? Like, what do you think you're drawing me?" And then obviously we had the amazing Matthew College singing that part.
You don't know.
With that very famous line. It's like the NESST slogan. But yeah, Anna Maria Smith, what do you think about that? Do you think he maybe is, when he gets in social situations, can be a bit awkward, can be a bit like uncomfortable maybe? And does that make him a bad person?
I think there is a difference between being an introvert and being just a bit rude, though. Because being an introvert, from my experience of being an introvert, I don't like to kind of prolong a conversation or cause confrontation. So for me, if I'm like, having a conversation that I don't really want to have, I'm as pleasant as punch, so I can get it over with and move on with my day and like get back to my room. So I think obviously there's all different kinds of introverts, but I do just think he is a little bit rude. It's kind of like, to me, it comes across as if he, like we said, he's obviously so dedicated to his art. But for me, it kind of comes across that with that being the only thing he cares about, he sees everything else as like a waste of time. It's a bit like if you parallel it to Hamilton, Hamilton's pushing aside his wife and leaving her when she's pregnant and stuff so that he's so obsessed with going to war and writing and, making something for himself. And I think it's a similar thing with George. He sees everything else that's not his work as a waste of time and a waste of energy. Which I don't think is the healthiest way to go through life. It's obviously a massive commitment and says a lot about his dedication, which is, good. We love someone dedicated, but I just don't think it's the healthiest way to exist.
Yeah, that I would say it's a good point as well. But I don't know. I don't know if it's just because I've played the part. I might be a bit biased, but I just feel like he just wants to. I don't feel like he's really trying to necessarily be rude. I think at some points maybe he is. It's really trying to be rude, but I feel like he's just like, in the nicest way he can possibly. It's just like, right, I'm working now. Let me be. Let me destroy you.
So you have the massive disadvantage of having sympathised entirely with your character and done your prep.
I guess.
And that's the genius. That is the genius of Sondheim, that he takes such a grumpy character and everybody does sympathise with his point of view.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very well written, if anything.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Like, I feel like if I hadn't had that connection with him, I would have been like, no, I'm not a fan at all. Evil man.
Evil man.
Holly Parkinson.
I think it's probably a combo of like, I think it's a combo of both. I think I think it's partly who he is and partly because he wants to get on with his work. So I think when he is working, in his head, his main motivator is, I want to get on with my work, and you shut up, I just want to draw you. But I think, like, if he wasn't working and if he wasn't, like, so engaged in what he was doing, if he wasn't so dedicated to what he does, I still don't think he'd be any nicer to people. Like, I don't think if he put his, like, if he stopped painting and was, like, engaged in what he was doing and was fully committing to any conversation he was having, I don't think he'd suddenly be, like, all, like, happy and smiles and plus punch, as Anna said. I think he'd still be quite cold. I think it's just who he is as a person, because I think if you are someone who like is willing, I think if you are someone who would naturally be more polite and accommodating and less rude, the conversations in between when he is working would be a lot more polite, I think, and a lot more approachable. And it'd be like just an easier conversation to have where I think he would literally just be like, I'm really sorry, like I'm working. But he's not. He just, even to people closest to him, like Dot, he just gives off the air of, I don't care about any of you, I want to work. And I think if he wasn't working, it'd just be, I don't care about any of you. If that makes sense.
It does say a lot that even his mum treats him that way.
Exactly.
Yes, and actually, that's a really good segue to get to the third statement. That was not planned at all. That's fantastic. So the third statement is his relationship with his mother. This is one of the things that it annoys us so much. This because when we meet the old lady, as it is in the script, obviously it's George's mum. She can barely even recognise George when we like first see her in the script. She's like, that man's noisy. And like, she's talking about George, isn't she, at that point? Trying to track my memory back in the gossip sequence. I'm pretty sure it is. And then obviously when we see them singing Beautiful together, George's mum's like, speaking of memories of the past, when they're looking out to like the surrounding area. So she's obviously, she needs like help and maybe guidance. And should art and success really come before the care of a loved one, like his own mum? Because as David said, obviously the mum started to treat him like that's well. He's been treating his own mum the same as he's been treating Jules. He's like, he was his enemy. So should the success of his talent, of his art, really come before caring for a loved one like his own mum? Holly Parkinson, do you want to get started?
I think I'm not sure, because I don't think it should, but I think in George's head it obviously should. I think he's willing to not step on necessarily, because his mum's not exactly like any competition. But I think, like David said earlier, I think for him the ends always, because they kind of do, because his work is completely immortalised. But I think to him the ends always by the means, and anyone, no matter who it is, whether it's his mum or Dot or anyone at all who may be close or distant from him, anyone at all kind of poses any threat to his work and his success, he'll just step over them. Which, if you want to be successful, is probably the best way to be, even if it is like slightly inhumane. It probably is the best way to be if you just don't let anything phase you and you're entirely tunnel visioned into your work, which he is. But it makes a good artist and a man with a good career not necessarily a good path.
Yeah, I always feel sorry on George's mum. Anne Taylor, the wonderful Anne Taylor, hope you're listening. Again, I was like saying sorry to her as well. I was saying sorry to everyone, I felt like. But honestly, she's one of my favourite characters in Sunday in the Park, George's mum, love her. I just wish George was a bit nicer to her.
I think Adam was just a massive diva throughout Sunday in the Park with George, and that's why he was apologising, because he was being Mariah Carey.
I'm not going to deny it.
I think it does say something about George's character, though, is if even when you're doing the show, you feel like you're being rude to whoever you're on stage with because you're that dismissive of what they do. I think it is very much a testament to who he is if you playing him are like, listen, I'm so sorry, I promise I'm not horrible. Obviously, a very, very extreme example.
Yeah, that's
very
the
nice
thing.
about.
Like, obviously, everyone knows me. I'm really like out there, outgoing, like talking to everyone. Like I try and be as kind as I can. But then George, it just seemed so much more different. That I was just like, I'm sorry, I'm in the character now. I'm not being me. Anyway, Anna, what do you think? What do you think about his relationship with his own mother?
Now, this is, I think, the bit that kind of is just as big let's try again, shall we? I think this part is just as much a kick in the teeth as we have with Dot. I just think there's a part in Act 2 when his mother's saying, like, oh, well, you and your ex-wife never had kids, and like that's the family line stopping, when really like the family line does live on through his work. And I just think that's really sad that the last thing that he has to kind of show for himself is his work. Like, obviously it was years and years ago, but people are, apart from Dot, really, people will literally only remember that guy by his painting. He clearly, doesn't have the best relationship with his mother, so I'm imagining there's not many memories of like sunny picnics and a roast dinner that they can share. And I feel like it comes back to that thing again. He just, everything else is background noise to him apart from his work. And I think when it comes to your mother, I mean, unless your parents have done something not very nice, then they should be a huge part of your life. And the fact that she's not, I think, just shows the extent of how cold he is. A lot of people who don't have many friends or relationships will still be close to a parent or a family member, but he's just like, snip, snip, they're all gone. Not important, which I think is really sad. And I think that's probably one of his worst traits.
Yeah.
That felt very morbid. I feel like it just got really dark outside around me as I was saying all that. And I was like, wow, like sound of silence in the background.
David.
But yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's any malice in it. I think that he's just, he's kind of, I can kind of very much sympathize with this side of it, because I'm like, I get very focused on my work, and I'm like, I can, once I've done this task, I'm one thing at a time kind of thing. So I'm focused 100% on a task, and then I'm 100% focused on the next thing, and then 100% on the next thing, to the detriment of friendships and these kinds of things. And I know that that's something of myself. I will say that throughout Sunday in the Park with George, throughout that process, I saw a lot of myself in George. Very, very much so. It was a little bit close to home. And if I'm taking that as, if I'm taking myself as a base model, there's no malice in it. It just kind of happens. And if he's waiting for recognition, and he's waiting for somebody in the art community to go, we accept you, that may be all that he wants. I don't know. Like, it may be the case that, he is just wired that way. And so he's like, as soon as somebody says that they accept him, he'll be like, great, and on to the next one. And then, it'll just be the same guy. I don't see any malice in it. So, but with regards to his mother, perhaps he just finds it very difficult to deal with that situation. I don't know.
If I were devil's advocate to myself, I would say beautiful is when you see him at his most like caring, maybe.
And yet he's still painting her,
or
sketching her. Like, there's still that, even in that moment. I really wish that I had the lyrics of Beautiful in my mind, but it is a duet bit, and I didn't memorize that part of it. You'd probably be able to say more than I can on that. But yeah, like, I agree. Like, you do get a much more of an insight into his relationship with his mum. But at the same time, he is still
Yeah.
sketching her. There is still that barrier in the way.
Yeah. I remember, like, there was one that I think there was literally a little second where literally I looked up at her and I was straight back out at the pad. It's what you're saying, yeah, I can definitely see that. Like, although he is being nice, he is being caring, probably a bit more human, you could say, his relationship with his mother. At the same time, yeah, he's still using it to get that thing, which is the success.
She's still a subject.
Yeah.
A subject in that moment. Yeah.
Well, he has a time where a little joke comes in. I think it's time we move on and come to a decision. But okay, so
Fab.
we've spoke about Georges Seurat. We've spoke about art over common decency. Is he maybe introverted? Is art his safe place? His relationship with his mother, probably one of the most closest people to him. He doesn't even put aside the art for her. I haven't really made him sound quite nice here, but my guest here, could you please come to a decision whether Georges Seurat is good or evil / nasty? Anna, you're up first.
Okay, so I have trash talked George the whole way through on every question. However, I just can't bring myself to say that he's evil because
/ nasty.
/ nasty, because although he is nasty, he is a bit, okay. I'm gonna have to. He's nasty, even when Jake Gyllenhaal plays him, and he's beautiful and nasty. I'm gonna have to just go with nasty. Sorry, George.
I feel like when I've said good or evil, it makes out that he's like a villain in a Marvel film.
Yeah, he's not quite Thanos. Not quite.
But yeah, we'll say nasty. We'll say nasty for him. But yeah, so I've got one nasty. Holly, what verdict have you came to?
I really am half and half, but I think if I have to swear to a side, I'm going to say nasty, just because I think that if I met him in real life, I think I'd hate him. So I'm going to say, I don't think I'd be like, oh, he's mysterious, and therefore I'd hear it. I think I'd just think he was a massive ding. So I'm going to side with nasty, I think.
Well, David, I mean, sadly, the decision can't. If you're going to say good, sadly, can't sway it. I'm afraid, but
yeah, no, I'm not. I'm saying 100% nasty. I haven't changed my mind at all. But I get it, man. I totally get it. Like, you know, he's up against all of this, you know, the arts community, and his own mum's against him. I totally get it. He's nasty, but yeah, it's with good reason. And you know what? He showed them.
Yeah. Well, how sad. I mean, is there any good Sondheim characters? Maybe we need to wait till season 3 to find out.
I think the Baker's okay.
Let us know.
Can we do Can we do Milky White?
Milky White.
So much to go into
on the YouTube. If you listen on the YouTube, let's go for 20 likes, and Milky White will be in season 3. Maniacal Mains.
Yes.
So we've had the witch.
If we get 30 likes, we're going to do Anthony. And we're probably going to make sure that he's nasty as well. That's an uphill battle.
So, well, we've had the witch evil. George is nasty. Who will be next? Who's nice? But, you know, we'll find out in maybe season 3. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit here, but I mean, one episode 1 of season 2. You've still got an amazing season to come. Thank you very much, Anna, Holly, and David, for taking part.
Thank you, Adam.
And
thank you.
No problem.
and be ready because there is some amazing episodes coming up in this season. I wish I could tell you, but I really can't. Like our page on Facebook, facebook.com/NESSTonline. Like our Instagram, follow Instagram, www.instagram.com/NESSTonline. And subscribe to our Patreon, which is also NESST Online. So, thank you very much, and have a lovely evening, and we'll see you next Monday for a Light Podcast. Good evening.